My name is Officer James Savota. It's truly an honor to serve as your citywide PIP coordinator. It's a pleasure to work, of course, with the chief and all the command staff and every man and woman on this entire HPD team. We work hand in hand all the time together, so it's a pleasure to work with everybody. We have a very full agenda tonight. If you have any divisional issue or something that's going on in your neighborhood, we will get with you after the meeting. We will make sure that all of your questions are answered, if not tonight, in the next 24 hours. So, like I say, don't bog down the meeting. If you have a specific issue that you want to talk about that's unrelated to what is going on with the presentation night, please get with us after the meeting. Also, if you have a cell phone, please turn them on silent mode so it doesn't interrupt your neighbors. Would like to thank the divisional for the refreshments, the food, and the beverages for tonight. And those divisions are Clear Lake, Northwest, Hobby, and Southeast. We want to thank you very much for providing that. And also, I would like to make a quick announcement. Yinter 2 that flew down from San Antonio for this meeting. He is deaf, he's from San Antonio, and he's a community activist in the San Antonio area with Metro Transit, and he's their liaison. And I had the pleasure to meet him back a year ago. So Mr. Yinter 2, would you please stand up so everyone can recognize you? Like I say, he's a big advocate in San Antonio. I met him the last time I was in San Antonio, and he wanted to come to our meeting because he heard what we do with the deaf community and also what we do with everybody here. So it's a pleasure to have you. Also, we have 2 resource tables, very important. We have our HPD Victim Services and we have our Harris County Tax Service. And it's very important. I know our HPD Victim Services, it may not be you, but you may have a loved one, a neighbor, a friend that maybe will need their service. We have their table on the side with information, place cards, information to provide. Please go over to the table. And of course, our tax service. You know, our property taxes are coming up, and they have some great educational that will help you save money. Without further ado, I'd like to announce our citywide chairperson, Joan.
Thank you. Before we get started, yesterday was 22 years of 9/11. Could we have a moment of silence and then we will continue? Always remember 9/11 and always remember the lives lost, their families, first responders who helped. Keep all in your prayers and never forget. Thank you. We want to welcome you to the Chief's Citywide PIP team. Now guys, you understand we're a team, not just a bunch of people coming in here, okay? We are thrilled to have you attend this community this evening. Your membership and participation are an asset to our communities, and that's all the communities surrounding the city of Houston. And as the members, we will accomplish our goal, which is basically reduce crime. And the chief and I were just talking about that. This citywide PIP meeting is also live streamed, as mentioned by Officer Savota, for community members who cannot attend this evening. And we have some who really can't make it out, so this is good for them. The nation's police departments have been the focus almost every single day and night, with news going after the police. If you turn every channel on, this is what you hear and what you see. But here in Houston, we proudly have in place the Positive Interaction Program. Nobody really in the United States, if I'm correct, has that program in whole the way we do. They might have parts of it, but not the whole thing. Be very lucky about this. And we promote the positive relationship with every member in the community. It is you and your community who can take credit for the PIP's success. So give yourselves all a great big hand. And at these PIP meetings, the goal is to provide attending members proactive information in which you can benefit, and you take it back to your different communities and share this. Well, we hope you do that. The invocation this evening is HPD's chaplain, Sergeant Hutchison.
I'm filling in for our chaplain who's otherwise committed on this evening. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for allowing things in our lives to be as good as they are. Thank you for the visionary leadership here at HPD under our police chief, Chief Troy Fenner. We thank you for each and every officer that works this community. We thank you for the community members that have come out to learn more about our department. We lift up the PIP program, and we pray that it continues to reach the goals in which it was formed. We thank you for each and every person. We ask that you continue to keep each and every one of our officers safe. We pray over the families that have been impacted by 9/11 and those that are still dealing with the tragedy from that day. We also ask that you continue to watch over us and keep us, is our prayer. Amen.
Next, we have the department's Crime Analysis Division, and that is Citywide Crime Analysis Report, and Division Manager Jim Millard. Hopefully, is he hiding in the back room here?
Working on it. So,
Yes, do we have him? Okay.
Jim, good.
Okay.
You got it. With the clicker.
We were trying to get
I
it all
thought I
set.
was gonna have to do that.
Sorry about that, we were having technical
Sean can do
difficulties.
everything.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jim Mallard. I'm the Division Manager for the Crime Analysis and Research Unit for Houston Police Department. And I want to go over some of the citywide crime statistics with you. James, can you? Yeah, there we go. So we're looking pretty good. Overall, violent crimes down 8%, and nonviolent property crimes down 2%, overall down 3%. Then the homicide number, it's 20% there. It's going to be a very fluid number. All of these numbers are very fluid. I think today it's at 18%. And we're seeing decreases in robbery as well as aggravated assault. We are seeing slight increases in sexual assault. And I say slight because we have 2.2 million residents in City of Houston, 2.3. We're looking into those as well. Audit thefts continue to be a problem. We continue to ask the public's help in being vigilant about securing your property and securing your vehicles. So we're continuing to deal with that and putting resources in there to investigate those. But overall, we're showing decreases. We've been carrying those decreases, and we're trying really hard to maintain those decreases through the end of the year. Next. If you have any additional information about crime stats from the Houston Police Department, you can go to houstontx.gov/police. You can visit our crime statistics and transparency sections in our website. We have data that you can download. We have reports that you can explore. We put a lot of information out there on a regular basis about what we're doing, both internal and accountability data as well as crime data that we publish on a regular basis. So feel free to explore that website and the resources that we make available there. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over. Joan? That's
Thank you.
ma'am.
Thank you. And now I would like all of you to meet our Chief of Police.
Thank you very much. Just want to say good evening to everyone, and
Joan, thank you for acknowledging 9/11. I think it's important that we never forget the sacrifice of those who paid the ultimate sacrifice, and make sure we uplift the families, the survivors, and make sure that we stand strong as a nation, as a state, as a city. I just want to also thank all of our first responders. A lot of things are said during the political season, and you know your chief don't talk a whole lot of politics, okay? Because I'm all about solutions and people working together. Those numbers, they don't lie, and that's what I look at. Now, still violent crime in our city, still things going on, and we have to continue to do what we're doing to make sure we continue to drive those numbers down. Because every day on the news, you see somebody in our city, 2.3 million victimized. And we all take, especially those violent crimes, very seriously. But I just want to give you a quick update. I know y'all been very sophisticated around here, and y'all do follow the news. I want to acknowledge and thank all of our frontline troops, but our federal partners, the U.S. Attorney's Office, Al Nundy, the Southern U.S. Attorney, and all of his staff and all of our federal agencies. You saw just last week the press conference where we hit them hard and we gave them a warning. A lot of the gangs that's located on the south side, the southeast side of our city, over I think 37, 38 individuals are in a federal detention center waiting to plead out or go to trial. But let me tell you something about that federal system. It's almost day to day. And they came down, the U.S. Attorney, the Department of Justice, they sent additional prosecutors down here to help us down in Houston area. And it's paying off, and we're just starting. That's just the first roundup, big round gang members. We got a lot more to come to go. So I just want to thank them, all of our federal partners, our local partners, and even the HPD officers that's on some of those task force, because they're doing an outstanding job. And I know, and let me pause because I don't want to forget about it, homicide. So proud of what y'all do every day. To have 80%, and Commander Spears is here, and I want to thank you for your leadership and everybody that's here tonight. Clearance rate, a divisional clearance rate of right at 80%, a little bit over 80%. That's amazing, okay? And people don't talk about that, but you can say things about Chief Fenner. I'm the chief. It don't bother me. But when you get to talking about my troops, our troops, and not acknowledging the sacrifices that they do, that bothers me. And I'm always speak up for the truth and the great work that they're doing. And they're going to continue to do it. I'm going to make sure that they have the resources. Also, I always give a shout out to our mayor, who's really been a smart, considerate, caring mayor that really funds us as much as he can. So I just want to ask him and tell him thanks. Another area that I'm very proud of, an initiative that we started over in the Bissonnette corridor. And I don't know if y'all had a chance to travel over there and see the progress. I'm very proud of everybody that took part of that. It's a changed area. And people, when you can see results, not so much of what I'm saying, that was for so many years. Everybody, the prostitution, drug trafficking corridor of the whole nation, the number one. We got all of that press, but when it's cleaned up, some of the media came out, and I appreciate it. But that's something that we should celebrate. And the thing about it, we need to make sure that we sustain it. There was another story last month in Midtown, about a 2-3 block radius that had gotten really overrun with criminal activity. We went out there, and it's not Chief Fenner, it's the team. I see Commander Johnson here from South Central. I want to give you your thanks and acknowledge your leadership out there, and you wave to them. We got a lot of great leaders here, but walk around that area right now, and we understand we still have problems. You got a lot of clubs popping up, and in that, if it's not run properly, it brings quality of life issues to the neighborhoods, and I understand that. But I'm honest with people. I'm out front, and I tell them it's not, so much our fault when people, business owners, property owners, they lease out to a business that's gonna cause the neighborhood problems. So everybody has to do their collective part as we bring crime down, especially when we're looking at quality of life issues. So those are just a few things that I wanted to report on. The final thing that I want to talk about, and I won't talk about it a lot because I'll mention it, is our pursuit policies and the talk of changes to come. But I want to be very honest tonight, because at some point this week I'm going to get out in front of some cameras. As y'all know, Sergeant Ricky Collins lost his mom tragically last week to a suspect, and I said it's not a policy thing on this one. Those officers did what they were supposed to do. When it got dangerous, they terminated the pursuit, but suspect kept going, driving 90 miles an hour. That's crazy in a 30-mile zone, and tragically crashed into Dr. Collins. And we just put her name out because Ricky asked for prayer and privacy, and he don't mind me saying this. I spoke to him today. Ricky lost his dad 2 years ago. He lost his brother last year. Lost his mom. That's a lot to go through, and that's why he was asking for privacy, and I granted. And I want to thank the media for doing that with us and acknowledging. But I spoke with him today, and he says, my mom has a name, and I want people to know who she was. And we're going to help him out with that. But y'all continue to pray for him. But I will be addressing a few things with regards to our pursuits. And I can tell you right now, I'm going to stand strong. And people say, well, look at your stats and look what's going on. There's an increase with pursuits and injuries. But we should also talk about we need help as police officers. I'm not pointing fingers, I'm just talking facts. Our lawmakers, if you shoot a gun at somebody or a group of people, how do we view that? Tell me what's the difference in when you drive in a car with no regard, a 4,000-pound vehicle with no regard for anybody. We got to look at it and take a tougher look at that. And I'm asking for a little bit of help and understanding from everybody, lawmakers, our judges, and everyone. And that's not pointing fingers. We're going to do what we have to do, and I have to do what I have to as a leader to make sure that we are doing everything as we can to keep people safe. But we're going to manage crime in our city. I'm not going to stand by and say, oh, we're just going to have a total, ban on pursuits. This is Houston. It's not New York, and I don't mean negative. I just want to give you an analogy as I be quiet and listen to entertain a few questions. If you chase or you pursuing anybody in New York, you go one block, what you gonna do? Run into traffic in Manhattan. They can't go anywhere. They got mass transit where millions of people move every day on the subways. It's not like that. In Houston, criminals, violent criminals, they steal cars and they move around in cars. And we got to make sure that we controlling that. So it's a challenge. That's all I'm going to say on that. And I'll finish up and tell you some things that we're doing when I do that interview sometime this week. But look, I'm proud of our citizens. I'm proud of what y'all stand for. I'm proud of Pip and Joan. Thank you for so many years, your leadership. But I also want to thank everybody for taking their time, because I know y'all busy. And people that's viewing online, thank you for being here, okay? But look, I'm gonna be quiet and entertain if it's all right with you. I don't wanna take too much time. Maybe a few questions right quick, and then I'm gonna turn it over to our homicide or whatever follows in the program. Does anybody have any concerns or quick questions? Go ahead, sir.
I'm curious for the PIP here, for the meetings, how can we, as a community, help you to reduce pursuit crime, the numbers that have increased? What can we specifically do to help the police community?
That's a challenge. You helping me and you helping us by simply being here tonight. But the pursuit, that's a decision that suspects are making. If we try to stop you, any sensible person should stop. But one thing that you can help us with, in way of just being safer, make sure when you have a red light, and all citizens, I'm going to talk about that. I'm sorry, green light. That doesn't mean that somebody's not going to run that light. It doesn't mean a suspect is not going to be driving reckless and crazy and crash through that intersection and end up injuring yourself. So make sure that you slow down as you clear intersections and just look. So that's one thing that we can do, and it's not your fault, but just an educational piece. Make sure that you watch those intersections, because most of the major accidents, well, crashes, they're not accidents, okay? They happen in the intersections, so we got to be careful. Anybody else? Thank you. And thanks to our friend from San Antonio, right? Our visitor, thank you. Thanks for being here. In the back right here, and I'll come back to you. Yeah.
You had mentioned these gangs in the 10 dangerous zip codes. Are these local gangs, or are they?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
And are they?
Yeah.
Are you catching them, in their homes, or are you catching them, in the middle of crimes, or how is that?
The big arrest that we had the other day, I'm glad you asking, because I sit back and this is the challenge. I talked about it in the press conference. Most difficult thing was for me, but we have to respect federal prosecutions, and they take a little bit longer than normal. But boy, it was a great feeling when we had probably 150 officers, federal, state, local, all over our city. And we hit them real early at one time and got the majority of them. So we catch some of them moving in their vehicles. We catch some of them at home. But it's a long investigation, and I can't go into a whole lot of detail, but it's more to come. And when you find out and we're able to disclose everything to you, you're going to be really proud about the relationship that we have down here. And I also want to thank the district attorney's office, too, because they're working with the U.S. Attorney's Office and seeing which cases are better served in the federal system or the state system. And I'm just really happy for the help. We all know it's well documented. Our backlog in Harris County, it's a problem. It's a huge problem, and we're trying to work our way through it. So they came down with a big shot in the arm, and we're going to continue to work with them. So, yeah, hopefully that's it. I'll get you, and then I'm going to come back to you. Go ahead, sir. Yeah. Yep.
We know some of our local judges are soft on crime. Is there something different that happens when the feds arrest them and prosecute them?
Well, I don't want to put out a blanket statement. We got some judges that's doing well, and some of them, might not be doing so well. It is just the way the system is set up. I think the biggest problem is the backlog. Okay, I really think that's the biggest problem. But you've seen, well documented on some of our local news, the decisions that some are, and I don't get up and say good or bad. We got a sophisticated citizens here in Houston, and those individuals, including somebody in police leadership, okay? If you're not doing what you need to do as a public official, as a leader, I hope the public is speaking out about it. whichever way you do it. So when you go to that poll, educate yourself. Don't just say because a judge is affiliated with this side. Educate yourself. The chief of police can't come up here and say, oh, well, this is a good judge, a bad judge. Educate yourself, but it's the way the system is set up. They don't deal, it ain't no backlog in the federal system right now. It's wide open. And I hope someday we get back to it in Harris County, but it's been documented. We know what caused it, but we gotta have a collective plan with everybody to move those cases through, okay? Yes?
Okay, do you have a plan for the homeless?
Yeah, I don't have a plan for the homeless myself. It's a collective plan, and you compare our city with other cities. I think we have probably a little bit over 4,000, and I'll get you the exact number on it. You compare us to any other major city, we're doing much better. Now I know that that's not any good feeling to property owners, homeowners. If you got a homeless camp or homeless individuals around you and it's really affecting your quality of life, I get it. But the mayor's plan and his wraparound plan has always been to get individuals in permanent housing. And they've done a good job about that. But I want you to understand something. Some of our homeless are suffering from mental illness. And the challenge is they don't want to be in permanent housing. And that's where the challenge come in, because a lot of them do want the help and they get the help. And if we're able to get them counseling and treatment, they can perform and they can conduct themselves in a way where they can become independent. And that's the overall goal. But we have to continue to love them, put our arms around them, but at the same time, everybody needs to be accountable, because if it's in the front of my yard or on my block, I'm gonna have a different concern. So we all gotta work together as citizens on that. One more question, because I gotta get out the way of our homicide. Let them come in. We good? All right, well look, thank you for your time. And during this political season, do me a favor, make sure everybody tells the truth and give your officers, not the chief of police, frontline individuals, and including our support staff that's here, give them credit for the great work that they do and just tell them thank you. And I thank y'all. Okay?
This evening, we have Lieutenant Melissa Countryman and Sergeant Richard Rodriguez, and they're going to do HPD's Homicide Cold Case Unit. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Chief, for your leadership. I want to first start off by saying thank you to everybody for letting us be here tonight and to share what we do with you all. My name is Melissa Countryman. I'm a lieutenant over the cold case unit in the homicide division. Our unit consists of our sergeant, Richard Rodriguez, who actually handles the day-to-day operations, and we have 4 detectives, Detective Darka Shorten, Detective Paul Vela, Detective Bart Neighbors, and we're missing one of our detectives this evening, Detective Ramon Cervantes. Unfortunately, he lost his mother yesterday morning. So we ask that you please keep him and his family in your prayers. This evening, we're going to kind of give you a brief history of our units and what we do, how we select cases. I don't know if anybody watches television or not, but I know CSI makes it look like it happens and it's solved within 45 minutes. I wish that was really the case, but we'll go over some of the things that we're exploring now, some new methodologies, and then we'll finish up the evening with a case study of the murder of Josue Flores, okay? So on that note, I'm gonna pass it off to Sergeant Richard Rodriguez. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for having us here. Just to piggyback off a little bit of what Lieutenant Countryman said, some people ask, why a cold case unit? I'm going to start off with some stats. From the 1980s, let's think about the 1980s, let's think about what was going on back then, what was happening, what was going on within the city. We had approximately 5,100 murders back then. quite a bit. Out of those 5,100, a little over 1,100 went unsolved. That was back in the 1980s. 1990s, a little over 3,700 murders. About 200 went unsolved. Coming into the 2000s, just under 3,000 murders. A little over 1,200 again went unsolved. 2010s up to 2019, a little over 2,500 murders. Just over 900 went unsolved. So you add those numbers up. That's quite a bit. So that's why the HPD thought to themselves, well, you know what? We need to start doing something about that. So in the late 90s, early 2000s, they came up with the cold case unit. So the way it started was they had some retired detectives come back in that wanted to, still had a little bit of life left in them, wanted to contribute to the community, didn't want to do the 9 to 5 every day like they were before, but still wanted to give back. So that's how cold case started. It started basically with the same size we are now, about 4 detectives, 1 sergeant and lieutenant. So just think about how all those cases have been stacking up. But that's why we're here, and we do the best we can. Now our mission is to basically solve murders. That's what we're supposed to do, solve murders. Find criminals, charge them, get them arrested, and eventually go to trial and get them prosecuted, hopefully. That's typically what we do. Now there's other things that we also do in cold case that some people don't know about. We do a lot of unidentified victims. We try to identify the unknown. We have several murders that, or I shouldn't say, we have more than several. We have a lot of murders where we don't know the identity of the victims. So that's another thing that we do. We also re-examine adjudicated cases. Now, we all like to be right every time we do something, every time we arrest somebody. Unfortunately, we're all human, and every now and then we get it wrong. And when we do, we go back, we re-examine, make sure we did it right, and if the guy's innocent, we do everything we can to prove that he's innocent. So that's another thing that cold case does. We re-examine adjudicated cases to make sure we did get it right. We also handle special assignments that we get from the chiefs or from the commanders and things like that. And another thing that we also do is we do all the extradition of wanted criminals that are out of the country. So we do quite a bit. So we do more than just solve murders. Now, what classifies a cold case? Cold case is a case that is 3 years old, unsolved, and where all the leads have been followed and it still remains unsolved. That's basically, in a nutshell, what a cold case is. So I guess when you see those TV programs, I think maybe Cold Files or Cold Justice, stuff like that, that's pretty much it's pretty much standard across the board. So that's what a cold case is. So there's nothing magical about it. There's nothing special about it. It's just 3 years old and it still remains open. And so those are the cases that we focus on. Now, how do we select cases? That's a little trickier. We have so many cases to look at. We have to be very selective about what cases we actually work. Now, one of the things I always preach to my guys is we need to get the best, more bang for our buck. And that's just like everything else. It's just all about case management. So how do we go about selecting cases? We look at what kind of physical evidence we still have. What evidence has been tested? What are the results of those tests? Is there technology now that we can use to retest items or maybe test items that weren't tested in the past? So that's how we go about looking and evaluating cold cases. Even though we'd all like to solve every single one of those cases, unfortunately, we just don't have the manpower or the resources to go after every single case. So we have to be very selective about the cases that we choose to investigate and reassign. Now, when we were asked to do a little presentation and we were brainstorming about what topics we should talk about or what we should discuss, one of the things that popped out in my mind, because we get a lot of phone calls, is new technology. Now, there's this one new technology that apparently is hitting like a ton of bricks, is forensics genetic genealogy, FGG. A lot of people have been hearing about that. It became famous through the Golden State Killer in California. So that's where it really hit home run, and that's where it really blew up, so to speak. So a lot of people think that, oh, hey, there's new technology. We can solve all the cases now. It's not quite that easy, not quite that simple. So we're going to talk about that a little bit more. And that's why I wanted to dispel what TV says and what the real world is. So we're going to get into it just a little bit. I'm not going to try to get too deep into the weeds. I'm going to try to keep it pretty simple. Now, for years and years and years, once they started doing DNA in cases, one of the standards is what they call STR DNA testing, short tandem repeat. Now, that's what we use. That's what's been used for as long as I've been working homicide and before then. I believe DNA really started picking up steam, I believe in the 80s, mid to late 80s is when it really started picking up steam. And we've come a long way since then. But that's the standard that we use. That's the standard that we use right now. And the main reason is because the FBI has a database which is called CODIS. Now that's a database that contains suspects' DNA. So whenever we're out working a scene, we collect evidence, we analyze that evidence. When we get unknown DNA profiles, we upload that into CODIS. Hopefully our suspect's in there. Not. Well, we kind of wait, follow other leads. Hopefully he'll get arrested or she'll get arrested. Somebody will get a sample of their DNA. They'll upload it into CODIS, and then we get a match, and then we go from there. Doesn't always happen. That's probably one of the pitfalls with CODIS. It's an enter it and wait type system. So that's how it works, but it works pretty good. If you got a good DNA profile, our suspect's been handled, he's going to eventually pop up, and we'll get a notification. Now, going back to the new technology, FGG, they basically do the same thing, but it's a different type of testing. They do what's called a SNP test, SNP. That's the type of testing they do. So we can't, the evidence that we use for a STR test is different from what we get for an SNP test. So there are two different exams. Now, the thing that we have to concern ourselves about is making sure we have an unknown profile. We gotta have that first and foremost before we can do either one of those things. So they kind of piggyback off of each other. And unfortunately, with the SNP test, that's not something that we can use and take to court right now. So when you see it on these TV shows and these programs where they're doing this FGG testing, the forensics genetic genealogy test, and they come up with a suspect, that's great. But at the end of the day, we still have to go back and get an STR profile to get that match so we can use that in the court. So that's one of the biggest misunderstandings that I've found when people call into our office and they ask, well, hey, I've heard about this new stuff, this new technology, why can't you use that? Well, like I said, first we gotta make sure we have an unknown profile. And we can't jump straight into that FGD testing because that's not something that we can take to court with us. And plus, it's a little bit more complicated than that as well, in that our labs aren't set up to do that kind of testing. Our labs don't have that kind of technology. Can't say if they ever will. It all depends on funding, and at some point, I'm pretty sure they will, but at the moment, we just don't have it. So that's the biggest difference between reality and TV, and especially with this new technology. This new technology is great. I think it's going to help us in the long run. It's We're just not there yet. And more so because we don't have the technology. Most government labs don't have the technology to do that kind of testing. So we have to outsource when we do use that technology. Now, currently here at HPD, we are trying that out on a few cases. So it is a work in progress for us. We're trying to get up to speed with the technology, but like everything, it takes time and it takes money. So it's just one of those deals. But when we do have everything, the stars are aligned properly, and we can move forward with FGG, this is pretty much how it works. Like I said, you gotta have some DNA, first and foremost. Now, another, I guess, misnomer when it comes to crime scenes, not every crime scene has DNA, believe it or not. Sometimes it's just not there. Sometimes the tests that we currently aren't sensitive enough to come up with a complete DNA profile, which is what we need to upload that into CODIS. So, like you see in the TV programs, it's great. That's TV and that's the perfect world. It just doesn't always happen that way sometimes. And believe it or not, it's just one of those things. It's just the way it goes. But when we do have a DNA profile, we've uploaded it into CODIS. We don't have any hits, meaning that we haven't had a match to our unknown DNA profile. What we can do is FGG, and that's what we're starting to do with some of our cases. So that's where basically you guys can do that stuff. Because once we get that profile, we get that SNP test done, we upload it into a system that's called GEDmatch. And we have a company here local in Houston that we are using to assist us in that. So basically the way it works is we upload it into the system. Once it's in the system, it starts looking for matches. And that's where the family tree comes into play. Has anybody done any genealogy work? Okay, so you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. And basically you can be little detectives on the side when you maybe help us out a little bit. But that's basically all you're doing. You know, CODIS looks for one specific person, one-on-one match. Whereas FGG, it starts off with a big tree, and then once they get that tree going, then the genealogist will contact us and say, hey, look, I think I know which branch your guy might be on. But first, to make sure, we got to do some testing. And those testings are called target testing or reference testing. And that's just to make sure that the genealogist is on the right path, so to speak. So, and it's going to vary from case to case, and it just depends on how good of a profile that we have. Just to give you a reference, in the Golden State Killer, I actually talked to the guy that did that. I think he told me they did about 300 target tests before they actually got to the right guy. And then even when they got the right name, what they had to do was still get a DNA sample from him, compare it to the sample that they had uploaded into CODIS. So again, FGG doesn't stand alone by itself. It's just a lead, and it points us in the right direction. It's kind of similar to a Crime Stoppers tip, and like, hey, I think this is your guy. So we go looking for the guy, we talk to the guy. In that particular case, they got a sample of his DNA. Of course, he didn't know about it, but they get a sample and then they compare it. And that's how that works. So those are the two big differences. So they kind of work hand in hand, but separately at the same time. So again, the limitations are this. With CODIS, our guy has to be in there already in order for us to get a hit. Or we wait until his DNA is entered in there. With FGG, it's not something that we can take straight into trial and use as evidence, but it's something that we can use to find our guy. So those are the two big differences in DNA testing, is the STR for CODIS and the SNP testing for FGG. But they both work hand in hand. I think at some point we may start using or at least I hope, we'll start getting a SNP profile so we can do both things. Because if you never have your guy in CODIS, what are you going to do? Just sit and wait? And if he never commits a crime again, you'll never know who he is. Whereas at least with FGG, you can start the process of trying to find out who he is. It might take a little bit longer, but eventually you can probably get there. So, like I said, at some point I think it'll be there. I think it's probably going to be more up to you guys to get with our politicians and whatnot, and our city leaders to maybe push the effort a little bit. But again, we just don't have the capability right now in our own government labs and our city labs. But private labs do that, but it costs money. But we're working on it. If you like, those are some of the references where we got some of the slides. You can take a picture of that. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a little case study about how we actually get a case and how we work a case. I'm sure a lot of you guys are familiar with this case. Back in 2016, in March of 2016, there was a little boy by the name of Josue Flores. Just another day for him, walking home from school. Typically, he would walk home with his friends or one of his brothers or sisters. On this particular day, for whatever reason, he was walking home alone. Now, in the process of walking home, unfortunately, he was assaulted, stabbed multiple times, and eventually died. Patrol responded because, of course, citizens saw the attack, heard the attack. Patrol officers go out there, control the scene. Little boy Jose was transported to the hospital. Unfortunately, he died at the hospital. So it went from an assault to a murder scene. Homicide comes out. They do what they typically do. They go out canvassing, meaning they're knocking on doors, looking for witnesses, for video surveillance. They do what's called a victimology. They find out about the victim to see if he had any enemies. Maybe he was getting bullied through social media. Social media is a big thing right now, and unfortunately a lot of stuff goes unnoticed when that's happening. But they didn't really come up with anything initially. Once they started doing some more canvassing, they started looking at reviewing all the video. They started finding a commonality, because initially a witness was saying it was a black male wearing a jacket that was running away from the scene. And so that's what they started looking for, and little by little, they started getting videotape of just that. Now, granted, they didn't catch the incident on video, but they got surrounding video. And that's what they used to eventually identify a suspect. You know, at the autopsy, they counted that he was stabbed over 20 times. And like I said, it's just a little boy, just barely starting off life here. You're not going to see anything gruesome. You're not going to see anything real bloody. But this is our actual crime scene photos. That location right there is where he was passed and where he was found, and that's a little backpack that he was wearing walking home from school. That's Josue. Now, as the original investigators started working the case, like I said, they did come up with a suspect. They got it on video. They put it out to the community. The community responded, and they're like, "Hey, you know what? Yeah, this guy comes to this location. I believe it was a game room that says, yeah, this guy comes here regularly, but ultimately it was a gas station that said, hey, look, yeah, this guy's come in here before, and he's used this ATM." And so they just did some cross-referencing, and that's how they were able to get a positive ID on our suspect. And that suspect is Andre Jackson. So like I said, the community helped which is what we always appreciate, because you got to remember this, guys. There's way more of you guys than there are of us. And at the end of the day, you are the ones that need to police your community and keep your backyard clean. All we do is just help you and enforce that. But it's, at the end of the day, we need to do this as a community. And y'all really came through with this one. Now, like I said, since they got him, they did a lot of testing. They did the DNA testing. They sent it up for analysis. And unfortunately, like I was saying before, you just don't always get it. Now, even though this was a bloody scene, it was a violent scene, you would think that there would be a lot more contact DNA in this particular case. Unfortunately, because most of the physical evidence, blood evidence, was the victim's, it pretty much drowned out any foreign DNA or the suspect's DNA. Now, this particular case, I believe the DPS lab did most of the DNA work, and it came up inconclusive, which basically means that we can't say it is him, and we can't say it isn't him. It's just one of those things that fell in the middle. Now, they did charge Andre. The DA originally took the charge, but unfortunately, after about a year, because it took about a year for the evidence to get processed and to get the results back. When the DNA results came back inconclusive, the DA's office eventually dropped the case, or they dropped the charge. So they still continued working it, but unfortunately they couldn't come up with enough physical evidence to recharge the case. So it sat dormant for a little bit. Now in 2019, we were approached, the cold case unit was approached, and we were asked to reinvestigate the case. So of course we did. Now it hit right at that 3-year mark, but in order for us to reinvestigate, it doesn't necessarily have to be 3 years old. We can investigate any special case if we're asked to. Now, what do? Once we get a case, what do we actually do? One of the things I always tell my guys is once we get it, we need to act like this is the first time we've got this case, heard about this case, or anything like that. You have to go in there with an open mind. You don't want to get tunnel vision and say, oh, the previous investigator said this, that, and the other. No, okay, that's fine. They may have done the right thing, but we need to come up with our own conclusions. So we do everything that they originally did. Go out, canvass, talk to witnesses, re-examine all the physical evidence, what was tested, what was not tested. Now you got to remember, 3 years have passed, and in the DNA world, 3 years is a long time. And in those 3 years, there's been a lot of advancement in DNA testing. So once we started looking at everything that we had, we realized that, with the new technology, the DNA testing kits have become a lot more sensitive. And so we reached out to some private labs, discussed the case with several labs, and at the end of the day, we picked up a lab out in Florida to assist us in retesting some of the evidence. Now, we didn't send out the actual physical evidence. What we did was the DNA extract that they had from the original testing, we sent that over. Because it's just easier that way, and it's cheaper. I hate to put it that way, but when you're dealing with a bunch of cases, you got to manage your resources. So that was the best way to approach this case. Well, 3 years passed by. Technology has gotten a lot more sensitive and a lot better. And I remember this pretty clearly. So we sent everything out, and I'm not a guy that takes off a whole lot. I tend to be a workaholic. And this particular day, I was in Vegas. Wasn't doing anything bad, just walking around in Vegas, enjoying a little time off. And I got a phone call from the lab. And they're like, hey, man, we got some preliminary results. I said, well, I don't like the word preliminary. Can you give me some hard results? Well, I'm gonna tell you, but we're gonna put it on paper next week once we do a reevaluation, which is what they have to do. We got your guy. We got a profile. And I was like, okay, is it the guy that we think it is? Yep. It was the original suspect that they arrested. The DNA testing had gotten that much better, that much more sensitive, where they couldn't do it in 2016, but in 2019, they could get it. And that's really all we needed to go back to the DA's office and say, hey, look, this is what we got now. You guys dropped the case because the DNA was inconclusive. Well, we got a lad that says, that's our guy. Are you going to take the charge? Of course they took the charge. So we go back, file the charge on Mr. Andre Jackson. And in June of 2019, we picked him up. Now we do the typical steps that we always do. We try to interview the guy, see what he said, see what he says, see if he's going to admit to anything. Unfortunately, this guy was, let's just say he was troubled. I'll just put it like that. Definitely a troubled person. Didn't admit to anything, admitted to being there, admitted to seeing it, but not doing it. And me personally, I was a little taken back because him being a former Marine, and so was I, I'm like, bro, you're a devil dog. You're gonna let that happen? Unfortunately, he had to because it wasn't that he let it happen, he was the one that did it. But nonetheless, it just is what it is sometimes. We go through the process. We go to trial in April of 2022. And he was convicted. He was found guilty and given a life sentence. So it was a little bit of justice for Josue. And that's basically how we go about working a cold case. It's, people ask me, how do you like homicide and how do you look at the murders? Well, one of the things I tell people is that it's like a jigsaw puzzle. You got all the pieces scattered out in front of you, but the only thing is you don't have that box with the picture to use as a reference. That's what's working a regular homicide is like. Now, cold cases. Think about what they originally had to begin with, all them pieces. Well, over time, guess what? Pieces get lost, pieces get damaged, things like that, and so you're having to, I don't want to say reinvent some of these pieces or recreate the pieces, but basically that's what you're doing. You're recreating everything that they had back then and trying to put it all back together again. Now, it's okay if you don't have all the pieces to make a complete picture, but as long as you can make out the whole picture. And that's what we try to do in cold case. And that's how we look at all of our cases that we get assigned. But like I said, we're a pretty small unit. We can only do what we can do with a four-man team, so to speak, but we try. That's how you can contact us. That's our email and phone number. And thank you for your time and attention.
If anybody has any questions, please get with after the meeting. They'd be more than happy to stick around and answer questions. Or you want to answer it now?
Yeah, I can do some
Yeah,
now.
we'll answer them now then. Okay.
Can you say what is the oldest or how old a case that this team has worked on or solved?
Yeah, the oldest case that since I can only talk about the ones that since I've been there. I got there around 2018, 2019, somewhere around there. The oldest case that I'm aware of is that gentleman right over there, Mr. Paul Vela, solved the 1969 case. And he actually got to talk to the suspect, and the suspect actually confessed. And he died what? A couple of months later. He died a couple of months later. He was already sitting in prison for another murder, correct me if I'm wrong, for another murder he committed in San Antonio. So like I said, you know, they say the wheels of justice turn slow. Sometimes they do. But with murder cases, one of the things is we never give up. It may not be right away, it may not be today, but it's one of those things that never goes away, because you have to remember, with murders, there is no statute of limitations. So that's why we have cases, unsolved murder cases, that go all the way back to the 1930s. Now, granted, we're never going to look at those. We're never going to, I mean, just everybody's just past that old. But one of the things that we are doing right now, we did receive a few grants from the federal government, and we're currently looking at 1970s cases. So those cases are 50 years old. And if you think about it, you know, this is probably the last go around those cases are going to have, to where we can actually find people, talk to people, hopefully get some answers. And that particular grant is called the Emmett Till Grant. And for cases being that old, I think we at least got one success story, because that other gentleman sitting right next to Detective Vela, Detective Neighbors, he was actually able to solve one of those cases. Now, granted, the suspect had already passed, but again, when we can do something like that, we can always bring closure to the family. And a lot of times that's what they need. I know with a case that old, they've probably buried it a little bit, but to know that finally they've completed that circle, so to speak, and they know what happened, or at least how it happened and who did it.
We have one more question here, or a couple more. Yes, question.
So is there, you said that we can help like with genealogy. Are there other ways that we can help? Is there like administrative stuff, or you know, research, or is there other things that we can do that would help y'all out?
Now, we don't have anything open to the public per se, but like I said, just really, if you know anything about a murder, just calling in and say, hey, look, you know what? I'm not sure if this is going to help, but I remember so-and-so telling me something about, well, let me back up a little bit, because this is one thing I love personally. I love when relationships go sour. Ex-wives, ex-husbands, ex-boyfriends, ex-girlfriends, ex-whatever. If you're in that type of situation and you know something, please call. And honestly, that's just really what it is. Because in situations like that, people tend to, well, because we're dating or we're in some kind of relationship, situationship, whatever you want to call it, they tend to not speak out up until the time they have a little bit of motivation. And that motivation sometimes is, you know what, I don't like you anymore. So it's just one of those things. Just share what you know.
Another question? Ms. House? Yes, ma'am.
What would be a sufficient staff? Right now you have 4 and they are out of retirement, but what would really be the number of sufficient staff persons? And in the near future, will you consider college interns who are seeking a career in homicide to help you out?
Yeah, we actually do have college interns that come and do an internship that help us review and go over cases. Dee, when was the last one that just left? About a year ago? Yeah, so we periodically do have interns that come in. And what was your first part of the question again? Oh, staffing. Okay. Well, you know, we have to look at it like this. We're not the only unit in the department. Everybody's hurting. Everybody's staffed. It's just a matter of where do you want to prioritize your resources. Now, unfortunately, that's not my place to say. I know what I'd like to have. I would just like to be the same size as a regular murder squad, which is approximately 10 investigators. So now, you just got to look at the numbers. Even with 10 investigators, will we ever get to go through all these cases? No. I mean, we have to be practical and we have to be realistic. We just we have to be very selective about the cases that we investigate to make sure, and I go back to this all the time, make sure we get the most bang for our buck. And where does that come into play? Well, it comes into play with staffing resources and money that goes into testing. Because a lot of times with cold cases, our current lab is just not set up to have the technology that we need for the type of advanced testing that's out there that will help a cold case. Now with fresh murders, everyday stuff, hey, our lab can do it all day long. But when a case is old, the DNA has been degraded, you need a special type of testing. And that's where the private labs come into play, but that costs money.
Sarge, appreciate it. If anybody else has a question after the meeting, they'll hang out and answer them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, we are finished for this evening, and on behalf of the citywide board, I'm starting to lose my voice. The divisional PIP officers, the entire command staff, we would like to say thank you to all the PIP members and who have been involved in their neighborhoods in the PIP program. And we are going to do crime prevention. You heard what the chief said. So get to it, the eyes and the ears, and you can be a big help. And you know that we normally do the motto. If somebody would like to step in and do it, I challenge you. How's that? After all these years? Yes? No? Okay. If you have the time, you get involved. You better make the time. It's your city. So go out there and eyes and ears and do something really spectacular. How's that? The other thing is, we're 40 years old. I'm not, we are, okay? Please get home safe. We'll see you the next meeting. I hope you had a lot of information to go back with this time. Thank you. Thank you.